Hello everyone, and welcome to another beer review. Now today we're on a Sunday video, so hopefully, I was going to say hopefully this will be a nice beer. It's from a decent brewery. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a good beer, but it's from a decent brewery. Hence why it's a Sunday video. Although, who knows, it could be fucking anything nowadays. In the past, you'd maybe have more of an idea of what it could be. Nowadays, Jesus, sky's the limit. It's just, it's like, what level of stupidity are we dealing with today, is what it feels like. But today we're doing Theakston's Quencher Session Pale Ale. Haha. Marvellous. Yes, 3.4%. It says brewing legend since 1827. Oh, Jesus Christ, eh? There's that fucking modesty coming in. There's no ego involved in that. Apparently it says that English beer served chilled. Oh, well, there you go. That's very insightful of you. Thanks for the advice. Arseholes. Brewed in the UK, T&R Theakston Limited. Basham, North Yorkshire, la-di-da-di-da. Get that up, you big hairy bastard. There you go. Yeah, marvellous. Oh, they've got fucking QR codes and everything. What I have noticed is black can, sticky label. So it's not a printed can. Theakston's trying to save money. What's going on here? You think? Really? Is everybody going down the cheap canning route, is it? I don't know. Pregnancy warning, alcohol can cause lifelong harm to your baby. Well, my mum definitely agrees with that, because her baby's been drinking almost since he came out the womb. Get up, you. Fucking great. Anyway, outlived her. Anyway, we'll crack this open in a minute. What I would say is, because I promised in the last video that I would maybe tell you a wee kind of bit of news. So what's happened is, we've all had a Boddingtons, that kind of, the original Boddingtons were on the cask, which was a nice ale and everything else. And then of course you got the revamp in the 90s, with, what's her name, is it Melanie Sykes or something, like one of the ones that used to do the fucking adverts. The cream of Manchester, mad for it and all that, eh? Happy fucking Mondays, eh? Yeah. Anyway, all that kind of bollocks. And it's kind of kicked about since then, on and off. You can usually round about these kind of areas of kind of Manchester and things like that. Round about kind of certain areas of Yorkshire, you can still get it on tap from the keg. And yes, you can get it as a kind of a John Smith alternative, as a kind of nitro kind of draft can, which is just piss, absolutely piss. And saying that, what really comes out the fucking keg isn't really that much better, let's be totally honest. But AB InBev, which owns the brand, that's the same company that makes fucking Budweiser, so you can tell that they're a fucking, a reputable fucking brewer. They've actually decided, I don't know whether it actually came from AB InBev or came from the actual brewery that applied to them to say, well, you're sitting there with this brand, you're not really doing it justice. Can we make a proper version of Boddington's in the cask? So I don't know where the idea came from, but Lee's, the brewery, have basically, I don't know whether they approached them or whether AB InBev approached Lee's or whatever, but at the end of the day there seems to be a kind of a tie-up between Lee's brewery and AB InBev to allow Lee's to produce a cask version of Boddington's based on the original recipe of Boddington's. Now, I do know a beer journalist, a reviewer, but more not in the video, but more in the kind of, you know, blog kind of thing. So a beer kind of reviewer that does it in the blog, and he's a bit of a cask aficionado. He prefers English ales and prefers the original live beers and everything else, just like myself. You know, of course, saying that though, this is the guy that just sits there and reviews things out of bottles and cans, you know, like an arsehole. But trust me, when I want to have a beer, I'd rather go out and get a proper cask ale rather than a can or a bottle, you know. But anyway, he was out trying to find it, and because he wanted to kind of try it and review it, and he spent almost 4 days trying to find it and couldn't find it, because either he got to the places and the pubs and things like that in lots of different areas, not just in Manchester but all over, they were either sold out, or even just after a weekend they got their delivery, but they were basically still doing their conditioning, you know, the 48 hours conditioning. So of course it's there, it's conditioning, but unfortunately it's not available for sale. You know what I mean? Stifling, I think it's known as. But yes, so well, speaking with him, he says, well, there's something about it, because at the end of the day there's plenty of other good cask ales. So let's be totally honest, his attitude is, well, I haven't tasted it yet, but that's because it's not crap. Because if it was crap, then people would have a glass of it thinking, Jesus, that's fucking piss, and they would leave it and move on to something else. But obviously it's not crap, because the bloody things are selling out like nobody's business. And I've went to a lot of pubs at a lot of different times, and I mean, he was visiting 4 to 5 pubs a day and he couldn't get it. And when after the weekend, on the Monday, he'd visited a few pubs, and the ones that did have it were basically conditioning it, and the ones that didn't basically were sold out, we're waiting for another delivery. So that's one to kind of look out for if you're kicking about that kind of area. So Boddington's on cask is now back from the Leeds brewery, and it might be something that might interest Sloppy Dave, because I know he likes the original pint of Boddington's, and why not? It's a bloody good beer. So it'd be interesting to see his view on it, and his reaction to it, and whether he can actually maybe get it when he's travelled, because I know he's always kind of travelling about, and it's not just on the Isle of Man where he's kind of based, but he also goes back to kind of the kind of Manchester area and kicking about there, and be interesting to see his kind of view on it. But it's nice to see that it's a bit of good news for a change. They're actually getting a beer that's actually kind of coming back, you know. Most of the time they're usually lost forever. So yeah, you can probably tell I'm kind of stalling a bit here, because I just know they've got a funny feeling this is going to be slightly maybe citrusy or something like that. You know, a modern kind of day pale ale, unfortunately, they're never doing it for the kind of traditional beer drinkers. They're doing it for the crafty narjos, you know what I mean, as they call, you know, wankers, as I say. But you know, the craft beer fraternity, like, oh, it's got citrus in it. Oh, creamy panties, you know. Oh, yeah, fuck off. You know what I mean? Get a grip yourself. But anyway, I'm stalling for time here because I don't really fancy. Well, I'm not saying I don't really fancy, but I just don't want to be disappointed. I like Theakston's to a certain degree, and one of my favourite beers is Old Peculiar. I do enjoy an Old Peculiar on cask. It's a nice beer. It's some nice complex flavours and everything else. Lovely mouthfeel, nice back end finish. You know what I mean? You know. Theakston's bitter's quite nice as well, you know what I mean? You know, so yeah, they can make some nice beers, you know what I mean? And of course, obviously, Theakston's moving on to the kind of Black Sheep and Rig Welter, which was supposed to be an anniversary beer for Theakston's before it was bought over. Again, another nice beer, especially on cask. You know, it's nice in the bottle, but it's even nicer in the cask. You know what I mean? So there's things I like about the kind of Theakston and Theakston's heritage. Jesus, look at that. That's poured well, isn't it? Slightly milk poddy already. Fucking hell. Smell wise, I'm getting malt. Yeah, I'm getting slightly syrupy malt. Not really getting any grain. Not really getting any hops. Yeah, it's quite syrupy, quite light caramel. Yeah, there's a decent amount of malt in there anyway. So that's one good thing. So, let's see what it tastes like. Not too bad. A little bit of hop at the back end, not a bitterness or that type of stuff, just slightly kind of a hoppy kind of accent. A decent hoppy accent. But not citrusy. Maybe a teeny little hint of pint, but again, I've got this as a nice kind of, I think it's about 7 or 8 degrees. So it is. So just that nice thing. Because sometimes there's a case as though, what I found is with certain pale ales, if you over chill them, because they're kind of a lighter beer, you have a tendency to maybe slightly over chill them. And if you over chill them, sometimes you kind of start losing, you know, the intensity and the malt and the grain, and then you're left with more of a hoppiness to the back end. So I would say definitely with a lot more kind of hoppier ales is be cautious, don't treat them like a lager. Have them up there, you know, close to around about the kind of 10 degree mark, maybe slightly more, but I would say definitely that's a good mark. It's around about the kind of 10. This is about 7 or 8 just now, and it's just kind of nice. It just kind of balances it out. And it's actually quite nice. Surprised enough. I was kind of worried. Yeah. Because the problem is if you dive down the malt, if you're trying to get a balanced ale and you've got a good amount of hops to balance out the malt, because I can smell the malt, there's plenty of malt there. But if I over chill this, then I'm going to kind of lose some of that malt flavour, and I'm going to change the balance of the beer. And I'm going to get more of a hoppiness at the back end, maybe in the kind of middle of the mid tongue. And it just feels like it's in balance because I'm getting more hops and I'm getting kind of malt. But I've kind of maybe chilled some of the malt and grain flavour out of it. So again, what I have learned in basically doing this over the years is be very cautious, you know, especially with lighter ales, is don't over chill them. And I've had that where as a case as though I've chilled it for a review and I've kind of slightly tanked it, and then there's a case as though I've had a couple other bottles and I've kind of had them at different temperatures, a little kind of warmer temperature, and far better beer, you know. So over the years I've learned not to go too gung ho. Kind of, if you're chilling things, have a bit of control. Lager, yeah, you can get away with it, and some other beers you can get away with it. But ales, especially the lighter ones, golden ales, pale ales, IPAs, these type of things. Even sometimes amber ales, you can over chill amber ales and you can just kind of change the kind of relationship a bit, which isn't so good. So that's one of the things I would recommend being careful of. And what other updates have we got? The gas bottle is arriving tomorrow. So it is. Unfortunately, I'm away tomorrow, so I won't be able to do it until I come back. But yes, things seem to be on okay. Now, what I've done is, the beer that I've done is a non-alcoholic one, the initial one anyway, is a slightly kind of cross between a kind of lager and an ale. What I've done is, I've done it as a kind of ale, and a kind of recipe, kind of lighter ale. But I've kind of putting it through the kind of lagering, kind of conditioning process. One of the things that made me do that was, obviously I was out of gas, so I'll go through the lagering process with it. So at the end of the day, and you probably think, well, why are you not basically going through the normal conditioning and just allowing it that way? Why would you need gas? Because it's a non-alcoholic beer, alcohol-free beer. So there isn't going to be, there's the conditioning from the point of view of the lagering, but there isn't going to be the kind of secondary kind of fermentation, because I don't want that, because I don't want to create fucking alcohol in it. So I've got to try and kind of balance it, and I don't know whether if I've achieved it or not. So we'll find out next Wednesday whether I've achieved it or not, or whether I made it done a bollock. So what I'm going to do is, I've done it as two slightly different versions. So one, I'm going to do it with non-alcoholic kind of ales. So I'm going to compare it to that, and then I'm also going to compare it to some non-alcoholic beers as well, and just see. And if it's piss, I'll be honest and say it's piss. If it's nice, then I'll kind of question, think, well, if this retard can fucking do it, then why are all these other breweries producing non-alcoholic beers that taste like piss? So yeah, there'll be questions asked if I've got it right. There'll be questions asked if I've got it wrong as well, thinking, what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? What have you done? You know, so be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah. Yeah. Should beat down these flavours. Right. There's a nice level of sweetness at the front of the mouth. Just nice. Really works quite nice. Nice bit of malt. And the malt's coming through, you get little kind of syrupy notes, little kind of caramel notes, and ever so slight honey notes, which is really nice. You're also getting a little bit of grain, and just in general, just a nice steady start. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing wonderful, nothing untoward, just a nice steady start. And it is supposed to be, it's only 3.4%, so I wouldn't expect it to be particularly complex, and it's supposed to be a session pale ale. But yeah, initial things at the front of the mouth. Nice mouthfeel. Nice kind of level of flavours. Maybe slightly on the lighter side, but I think it works. Moves on to the kind of mid-tongue. And yeah, you're just getting a kind of replication of what you get in the front of the mouth, but you're starting getting some slight hoppy accents, ever so slight hoppy accents. And yeah, there seem to be kind of two tones. One is just, it's not quite piney, but it just kind of slightly gives you a little kind of a light sensation of it could develop, and you're thinking it's going to develop into a piney one kind of flavour when it gets closer to the kind of back of the mouth, but it doesn't. So it's like kind of threat, you think, here it's coming, and it doesn't. Now, for some people that might be a bad thing. For me, who not particularly fan of piney flavour, especially at the back end, and yeah, I'm quite happy it doesn't develop into more. I mean, I'm quite happy with the threat. That's enough for me, you know. But yeah, so it kind of threatens but doesn't actually develop. And it's quite nice because it just kind of, it draws you, think, oh, here it comes, you kind of bracing yourself. No, it doesn't. And yeah, it just kind of slightly puts you on edge, but then takes you back again. And then once you've had the first couple of sips and you're kind of acclimatised, you think, I'm actually quite enjoying this. I'm quite comfortable with this, you know. So there's that kind of feeling. But you also get a slightly kind of, ever so slightly herbal, light herbal accent from the hops as well, and you've got them too, and it just kind of breaks up from the front of the mouth to the mid-tongue. It just has these kind of little bits of interest there. Again, you would probably think it's going to be more at the back end, but when it transfers from the mid-tongue to the back of the mouth and the aftertaste, no, it doesn't. It's actually quite light. It's quite a quick, easy finish. All kind of flavours kind of dissipate as one. And you expect to get a slightly kind of piney kind of linger, and it just doesn't. And then once you've had a couple of sips, like I says, and you kind of feel comfortable with it, yeah, it's actually quite nice. I mean, you could stick quite a lot of these on at a barbecue or a nice summer's day. I mean, really, in a beer garden, these actually sink quite nice. And it's very easy drinking, kind of lighter on the palate, really nice mouthfeel, and just, yeah, it says it's a session pale ale, and it actually works. It is a session pale ale, and it's actually quite nice. There's a nice balance to it. It's not overly complex. It's not trying to be kind of something new or wonderful. It's just got some nice flavours there. And yeah, they've just got that, like you keep saying, they've got the balance right. It's not overly complex. They're not trying to kind of reinvent the wheel. And yeah, they kind of understand less is more. They've actually got that balance right. And we're kind of worried that they wouldn't. And just with the can and everything else, and the colour. And I'm thinking, everything screams to me it's trying to attract a kind of craft beer drink. You've been in the supermarket, you've seen all the stupid gaudy coloured cans. I mean, Jesus. And let's be honest, most of Theakston's kind of colour schemes are usually kind of black bottle, black label, black can, and then, you know, the kind of whatever it is, and kind of gold writing and things like that, you know, and all this kind of bollocks. And this is obviously a bit more gaudy and a bit more colourful than you would expect normally from Theakston's, and I'm looking, and that's what kind of got me worried, thinking, oh God, they're trying to attract the craft beer drinker. But thankfully they haven't gone down that route, and I'm thankful for it, and I'm actually quite enjoying this. I'm actually thinking this is actually quite nice. As you can see, unfortunately I think it's only a 440ml can, so they're a bit of a bunch of cheap bastards with that, I think. Was it 400? Yeah, 440ml. Look at that. Cheap bastards. Look at them. I'm showing the wrong fucking thing. There we go. Look, 440ml. So, what would I give this out of 10? Has it been whittering on a Sunday? Right. What would I give this out of 10? I like it. I was apprehensive. Probably, as I've given my reasons, to a certain degree justified, but no, they didn't go where I was concerned that they might have gone, you know, chasing the craft beer fraternity. But no, they've still kind of stayed to the roots to a certain degree, and yeah, I like it. It's nice. There's a balance to it. There's a nice amount of malt to it. There's nice little honey tones to it. There's some nice little caramel tones. And, you know, it's just like, overall, it's actually, oh, Jesus, far better than any mainstream piss water or any of these type of things, and some of these god awful golden ales and things like that. You think far better, and you feel it's a better beer with better ingredients. You do feel it's just, there's a little bit more experience to it, you know. It doesn't feel like it's a kind of a young brewery with a bit of flash in, you know, a bit of flash in the pan type thing, you know, trying to make a statement. No, it's a kind of more controlled, more kind of a level-headed kind of attempt at, I'm not saying it's a completely traditional pale, but it's a traditional beer with just maybe some little hints of something a little bit different, but not enough to kind of overpower it or to kind of take it fully that way. So on that basis, what would I give it? I'm going to give it a 7.5. It's really nice. And the great thing is I got it as a 4-pack, so I've got another 3 to enjoy. So that's another reason. So yeah, I bought the 4-pack, and yeah, it's actually very nice. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely one I would kind of keep in mind for a kind of summer kind of drink on a hot summer's day and things like that, or if you're going to have a barbecue outside or whatever, or even if you're just standing there and having an early kebab, you know. Cheeky Billy. Yeah, I would recommend it. So yes, it's 3.4%, 440ml can, which is a bit girly. But yeah, 7.5 out of 10. I would recommend it, and yeah, it's actually very enjoyable. Thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye for now.